The trade station of Karan Drift moved slowly through the dark, its wide metal rings turning like calm wheels in space. Lights shone across its surface, marking docks, markets, and observation halls built by many species working together. To the Galactic Union, this station was proof of cooperation and strength. To humans, it was simply very big. Commander Elias Rourke stood inside one of the largest observation halls. The clear viewing wall stretched from floor to ceiling, revealing the blue giant star outside. Its light painted everything in soft blue and white, making shadows long and thin. Elias stood still, his hands behind his back, his posture straight but relaxed. Around him, aliens moved and spoke in low voices. Some floated, some walked, some glided on artificial gravity fields. Their shapes were different, their colors bright or dark, their voices musical or sharp. Elias was easy to notice among them. He was shorter than many, plain in shape, with no glowing skin or extra limbs. His uniform was simple, dark, and worn with care. Outside the window floated the reason everyone came to this hall: the spire of Talon. It was so large that Elias could not see its full shape at once. It stretched across space like a frozen storm of metal and light. Rings, towers, and lines connected in ways that felt both careful and wild. Energy flowed through it like slow rivers of fire. It was older than most known civilizations and more important than any single world. The spire held star paths stable. It bent gravity, guided safe travel, and kept nearby systems alive. Without it, dozens of inhabited worlds would be lost. To the Galactic Union, the spire was sacred. To Elias, it was familiar. He stared at it without moving. Scifi noticed him after several long moments. She was standing with a group of diplomats, her tall form wrapped in flowing silver fabric that shifted color with the light. Her skin glowed softly, pale blue with gentle patterns that changed with her mood. Her eyes, large and bright, followed Elias's gaze. She stepped away from her group and approached him quietly. Her movements were smooth, almost careful, as if she did not wish to disturb his thoughts. "You have been staring for a long time, human," she said softly. Her voice was calm, curious, not unkind. "Is it too big?" "Up." Elias did not respond at once. His eyes stayed on the spire. He was not offended. He understood the question. Many aliens believed humans feared large things. After all, humans were new, their ships small, their colonies fragile compared to ancient empires. Scifi tilted her head slightly, studying him. Most humans show excitement or discomfort when they see it for the first time. She continued. "You show neither." Elias breathed in slowly. The blue light reflected in his eyes. "I am not afraid," he said at last. His voice was quiet, steady. "I'm remembering." That answer surprised her. "Remembering what?" she asked. "Something we built once," Elias replied. Scifi's glowing patterns shifted. Amusement flickered across her face. Humans did not build anything like the spire. "No," Elias said, "not like this, but big enough to teach us a lesson." Behind them, a few nearby aliens paused their conversations. Humans rarely spoke this way, especially in places like Karan Drift. Most stayed silent, careful not to draw attention. Scifi followed Elias's gaze again, then looked back at him. "The spire is over 1,000,000 cycles old," she said gently. "It was created by a civilization that no longer exists. Even the oldest species among us did not see its construction." Elias nodded. "That sounds familiar too." She studied his face more closely now. There was no pride there, no challenge, only quiet focus. Before she could ask more, a deep tone echoed through the hall, a signal tone, slow and formal. The Galactic Council session was about to begin. Scifi straightened. "The council is gathering," she said. "You will attend, yes?" "Yes," Elias answered. "That's why I'm here." They moved together toward the council chamber. As they walked, Elias noticed the way other delegates glanced at him. Some looked curious. Others looked doubtful. A few barely noticed him at all. The council chamber was vast, circular, with layered platforms rising like steps around a central space. Holographic symbols floated above each seat, marking species and authority. At the center, a projection of the spire hovered, rotating slowly. Elias took his assigned place near the outer ring. Humans were still observers more than decision-makers. He did not mind. Observation was often more useful. The council began with formal words, long and traditional. Reports followed. Energy fluctuations, structural drift, minor failures that were becoming less minor with each cycle. As the projection changed, showing stress lines and fading energy flows, the mood shifted. Voices grew sharper. Movements became tense. "The decay is accelerating," said a thick-voiced counselor with stone-like skin. "We have tried every known method." "The ancient systems reject our interfaces," said another, tall and thin, with 4 eyes blinking in frustration. "We cannot command what we do not understand." Elias listened. He watched patterns form and repeat. He saw redundancies failing, feedback loops feeding into each other. The design was beautiful, but rigid. Too perfect, too dependent on its original creators. A counselor gestured toward the projection. "If the spire collapses, the star paths will break. Evacuation of 42 systems will be required." A low sound filled the chamber. Fear, contained but real. Scifi glanced toward Elias. He was still calm. The lead counselor's many eyes scanned the chamber. "Are there any new insights?" they asked. Silence followed. Then, unexpectedly, Scifi spoke. "The human observer may have something to add." Several heads turned. Elias felt dozens of eyes on him. Some curious, some doubtful, some clearly amused. The lead counselor hesitated, then nodded. "You may speak, human." Elias stood. He did not raise his voice. He did not rush. "I am not an expert on your ancient technology," he said honestly, "but I recognize the thinking behind it." Murmurs spread. "The spire was built to last forever," Elias continued. "That is its strength. And its weakness." One counselor made a low clicking sound. "Explain." "Humans learned long ago that nothing lasts forever," Elias said. "So we build things expecting failure. We plan for repair, for replacement, for collapse." That caused quiet laughter in some sections. Scifi did not laugh. Elias gestured to the projection. "This structure resists change. It does not adapt. When one part fails, it pulls others down with it." The lead counselor leaned forward. "And you believe you understand it better than we do?" "No," Elias said simply. "I believe I understand failure." The laughter faded. Elias met the counselor's gaze. "We built megastructures once. Defense rings, gravity nets, energy collectors. They were not as old or advanced as the spire, but they were big, bigger than our confidence." Images rose in his mind. Cities falling, skies burning, hard lessons paid for in lives. "They failed," Elias said quietly. "And we survived because we stopped trying to preserve perfection." The chamber was silent now. Scifi felt something change. The way the human stood, the weight behind his words. The council did not respond immediately. Formal rules demanded review, caution, delay. But unease had already taken root. The session ended without resolution. Delegates departed in thoughtful silence. As Elias left the chamber, Scifi caught up with him. "You were not staring because it was too big," she said. "No," Elias replied. "Then why?" He looked back through a viewport at the spire, glowing against the dark. "Because when something that big starts to fail," he said, "it doesn't ask permission." Scifi felt a chill she had never felt before. And far outside the station, deep within the ancient structure, a system quietly slipped beyond its limit. The warning came less than 1 cycle later. A low, steady alarm spread through Charon Drift, not loud enough to cause panic, but deep enough to be impossible to ignore. Lights in the corridors shifted from soft white to pale amber. Information screens changed their displays, filling with flowing symbols and urgent data. Elias Rourke was in a quiet data room when the alert reached him. He looked up from the terminal as the floor hummed gently beneath his boots. The station had begun to adjust its orbit, a small movement meant to protect itself from something far larger. Outside, the spire of Talon glowed unevenly. Energy that once flowed in smooth lines now flickered. Some sections burned brighter than before, while others dimmed, like parts of a dying star. The change was subtle, but to trained eyes, it was clear. The spire was no longer stable. Across the station, fear spread quietly. Alien engineers rushed between control centers. Diplomatic aides whispered urgently. Security teams moved to standby positions, unsure of what danger they were preparing for. The Galactic Council was summoned again, this time without ceremony. The chamber filled faster than before. Voices overlapped. Old rivalries were forgotten in the face of shared danger. Elias took his seat, calm as ever, but his eyes were sharp. He watched the projection at the center of the room, where red warning markers now appeared along the spire's structure. "The decay rate has doubled," announced one counselor, its voice tight. "We have lost contact with 3 stabilization nodes." "That is impossible," another replied. "Those nodes are self-sustaining." "They were," came the answer. A tall alien engineer stepped forward, its many hands trembling slightly. "The ancient systems are rejecting our control inputs. The more we try to correct the imbalance, the worse it becomes." A ripple of distress moved through the chamber. Scifi sat near the inner ring this time. Her glowing patterns were dimmer than before. She looked toward Elias, noticing how he leaned forward, studying the failures instead of reacting to them. The lead counselor raised a limb. "We will hear solutions, not fear." Silence followed. Then voices began offering familiar ideas. Increase energy flow. Reinforce the gravity anchors. Restore the original balance algorithms. Each suggestion was answered with data showing why it would not work. The spire was resisting them, as if defending itself from interference. At last, the lead counselor turned its attention to Elias. "Human," it said, carefully neutral. "You spoke of understanding failure. Do you have anything to add now?" Many eyes turned toward him again. This time, there was no laughter, only expectation, and a hint of desperation. Elias stood slowly. "Yes," he said, "but you will not like it." A few counselors shifted uncomfortably. "The spire is not breaking because it is weak," Elias continued. "It is breaking because it is rigid. Every system depends on every other system. There is no room to bend." One counselor made an annoyed sound. "It has stood for 1,000,000 cycles, and now it is failing," Elias replied calmly. "Time does not care about reputation." The engineer stepped forward again. "What do you suggest, human?" "We cannot rewrite ancient alien design." Elias nodded. "You are right, you cannot. But you can stop trying to save all of it." The chamber grew quiet. Scifi's eyes widened slightly. "Explain," the lead counselor said. "Humans learned something the hard way," Elias said. "When a system is too big to fix, you stop fixing everything. You choose what must survive." A low murmur spread. "You are suggesting we abandon parts of the spire?" a counselor asked sharply. "Yes," Elias answered. "Before it forces you to abandon everything." That caused clear discomfort. The spire was more than infrastructure. It was history, pride, proof of ancient greatness. Scifi spoke up. "If we isolate damaged sections, would that slow the collapse?" The engineer shook its head. "The internal connections are too deep. Cutting them could cause a chain reaction." Elias met the engineer's gaze. "Only if you cut them cleanly." "What does that mean?" the engineer asked. "It means you don't try to preserve their original function," Elias said. "You turn them into something simpler. Dead weight instead of active failure." The room fell into deep silence. Finally, the lead counselor spoke. "You are asking us to trust a human method over millennia of tradition." Elias nodded once. "Yes. Why should we?" the counselor asked. Elias did not answer immediately. He looked around the chamber. meeting the eyes of beings from dozens of worlds. Because we are still here, he said simply. And many greater civilizations are not. That answer carried weight. The council recessed briefly to debate. Elias waited outside the chamber, standing near a viewport that showed the spire more clearly than before. Small flares of energy escaped from its surface. Harmless for now, but growing more frequent. Scifi joined him. "You are calm," she said quietly. "Too calm." "I've seen worse," Elias replied. She studied him. "You speak as if you expect this to fail." "I expect parts of it to fail," he said. "That's different. Doesn't that frighten you?" she asked. Elias shook his head. "Fear comes when you pretend nothing will go wrong." The council doors opened again. The lead counselor approached Elias. "We will grant you limited access," it said. "Observation and advisory authority only. You will work with our engineers. No unilateral actions." "That's enough," Elias said. He was escorted to a deep systems control hub, closer to the spire than most non-engineers were allowed. The room was filled with holographic interfaces layered over each other, showing data in alien formats. Elias took a moment to study them. "This is very complex," one engineer said defensively. "I know," Elias replied. "That's part of the problem." Working together, they translated data into simplified visual models. Elias began marking sections not by importance, but by dependency. Which systems could survive alone? Which ones would fail without constant support? As hours passed, tension grew. Alarms increased. One stabilization node went dark entirely. "This is escalating too fast," the engineer said. "Yes," Elias replied. "Because it's trying to correct itself." "Trying?" Scifi asked. "It was built to maintain balance," Elias said. "It doesn't know it's dying. It thinks it's under attack." That thought unsettled everyone. At last, Elias highlighted a cluster of systems near the spire's midsection. "These," he said, "are the problem. Unresile. Are unresile." The engineer stared. "Those are core relay structures. They are feedback amplifiers," Elias said. "They make small errors bigger. Disabling them would reduce efficiency by 30%, the engineer argued, "and increase survival by 100, Elias replied. The engineer hesitated. "If we are wrong, if you do nothing," Elias said gently. "You won't have time to be wrong." The engineer looked to Scifi. She nodded slowly. The command was given. Energy flows shifted. Several sections of the spire went dark, intentionally this time. The station shook lightly as the massive structure adjusted. For a moment, alarms spiked. Then something changed. The remaining systems stabilized. Energy flows smoothed. Stress markers stopped spreading. The spire dimmed slightly, but it stopped tearing itself apart. In the control hub, no one spoke. Finally, the engineer whispered, "It's holding." Elias exhaled slowly. "Good. Now we can start saving it." Scifi looked at him with new understanding. The human had not conquered the spire. He had convinced it to let go. The spire of Talon did not fail that cycle. That alone felt strange. Across Charon Drift, systems slowly returned from emergency mode. Lights softened. Alarms faded into silence. But no one relaxed. Everyone knew the danger was only paused, not ended. Inside the deep control hub, Elias Rourke remained standing, his eyes fixed on the shifting data fields. The simplified models he had created still floated in front of him, showing the spire as layers of strength and weakness instead of sacred mystery. Alien engineers moved carefully around him now. Their voices were lower. Their movements slower. More thoughtful. Where once they had corrected him or questioned every word, now they waited. The spire responded to the changes like a wounded animal that had stopped thrashing. "Stability window is holding," one engineer said, disbelief clear in their voice. "But the ancient systems are still trying to reconnect the disabled relays." Elias nodded. "That's expected." "Expected?" another engineer asked. "It is fighting your solution. It's doing what it was built to do," Elias replied. "It believes balance means everything connected." Scifi stood beside him, watching the data shift. "And humans believe something else," she said. "Yes," Elias answered. "We believe balance means knowing what to let fall." The spire trembled again. This time, it was stronger. Across the station, artificial gravity fluctuated. Some beings stumbled. Others grabbed railings. A low warning tone echoed through the control hub. "Pressure surge in the inner lattice," an engineer announced. "Energy rerouting automatically. That reroute will overload the outer shell," another said. Elias leaned closer to the display. "Cancel the reroute." The engineer hesitated. "That command violates ancient protection laws." "I know," Elias said calmly. "But if you let it complete, the shell will crack." Scifi turned toward the lead engineer. "Do it." The command was issued. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the spire released a slow, deep pulse of light. Not violent, not explosive. It was almost like a sigh. Stress readings dropped. Several engineers stared in open shock. "The lattice stabilized," one whispered. "By removing the protection response." Elias allowed himself a small breath. Sometimes protection causes more harm than the threat. The council was informed immediately. A live link opened, showing the control hub and the spire's status. The lead counselor's voice filled the room. "Explain why the spire continues to resist its own repair." Elias stepped into view. "Because it was designed by a species that feared failure more than loss," he said. "They built perfection and locked it in place." "And humans?" the counselor asked. Elias looked tired now, but his voice remained steady. "We built systems knowing they would break. So when they did, we were ready." As if to test those words, a new alert flared red across the displays. "Cascade forming in the lower anchor chain," an engineer reported. "If it reaches the core, we lose everything." Scifi felt a cold wave pass through her glowing skin. "How long?" "Minutes," the engineer answered. The control hub filled with tension. Elias studied the anchor chain data. His jaw tightened. "That chain is too old, too rigid. It can't adjust to the new load." "Can it be reinforced?" someone asked. "No," Elias said. "Only replaced." A stunned silence followed. "Replaced?" the engineer repeated. "With what?" "We cannot build ancient materials in minutes." Elias shook his head. "Not replaced with the same thing." He turned to another display, calling up schematics of human structures stored in Union databases. "We build temporary anchors," he said. "Crude, inefficient, but flexible." Scifi stared at the designs. "These are simple." "Yes," Elias replied, "and that's why they work." The engineer looked uncertain. "Human materials will not withstand spire-level forces." "They don't have to," Elias said. "They only need to fail slowly." That idea seemed to confuse everyone. "Slow failure is better than sudden collapse," Elias explained. "It gives you time." The council link crackled. "You are proposing attaching human-built structures to an ancient relic," the lead counselor said. "That would be seen as desecration." Elias met the projection's gaze. "With respect," he said, "it's already dying." Another violent tremor shook the control hub. Consoles flickered. Several beings lost their balance. "Anchor chain integrity at 60%, the engineer shouted. Scifi stepped forward. "Council," she said firmly. "We can debate history later. Right now, we choose between pride and survival." There was a pause. Then the lead counselor spoke again. "Proceed." Human construction drones were launched from Karen Drift within moments. They were small, rough machines compared to the elegant alien tech around them. They carried raw metal, flexible frameworks, and modular gravity stabilizers. As the drones moved toward the spire, many aliens watched in silence. Some looked doubtful. Others looked almost offended. Elias coordinated the effort, speaking calmly, clearly. He assigned tasks, simplified commands, and ignored ancient protocol layers that slowed response time. "Attach here," he said, marking weak points. "Don't try to match the structure. Let it move." The drones worked fast. Energy surged through the anchor chain again. One section cracked, sending a wave of force through the spire. The human anchors bent. They did not break. Stress readings dropped from critical to severe. That should not be possible, an engineer whispered. Elias watched carefully. It is possible, he said. They're not resisting the force. They're riding it. Minutes passed like hours. Gradually, the cascade slowed. Then it stopped. Across the spire, energy flows settled into new patterns. Not perfect, not ancient, but stable. In the control hub, several beings sank into seats, exhausted. Others simply stared at the displays, trying to understand what they were seeing. Scifi turned to Elias. You did not save the spire as it was. No, Elias said quietly. I saved what it needed to become. The council link remained open. The lead counselor spoke again, this time with a different tone. The spire now depends on human-built systems, it said. Yes, Elias replied. For now. And if those systems fail? They will, Elias said honestly. Eventually. That caused another stir. But when they do, Elias continued, they will fail in ways you can see coming. Ways you can prepare for. Silence followed. Finally, the counselor said, your methods are unsettling. Elias allowed a tired smile. That's what kept us alive. The spire of Talon glowed again, softer than before, its light uneven but steady. For the first time in a million cycles, it was not alone in holding itself together. And for the first time, the Galactic Union began to understand why humans did not fear things bigger than themselves. They learned how to live inside them. The spire of Talon survived the next cycle, then the one after that. Across Charon Drift, tension slowly loosened, but it never fully disappeared. Everyone knew the danger was not gone. It had simply changed shape. The ancient structure no longer followed its original design alone. Human-made systems now pulsed alongside it, rough and simple, but alive with motion. Inside the control hub, Elias Rourke finally sat down. It was the first time he allowed himself to rest since the crisis began. His shoulders felt heavy, and his eyes burned from long focus. Around him, alien engineers moved with quiet purpose. They were no longer frantic. They were careful. Data streams showed stable readings. Not perfect, not beautiful, but steady. Scifi entered the hub quietly. Her glowing patterns were brighter than they had been since the crisis began. She stopped beside Elias, watching the displays. It's holding, she said. Yes, Elias replied. For now. She looked at him. You never promise forever. Elias gave a faint smile. Forever is a dangerous word. Outside the station, the spire rotated slowly. Sections once considered sacred were now dark, sealed off, silent. New structures clung to it like scaffolding. Clearly human in design, they looked out of place, but they worked. The Galactic Council gathered again, this time without fear in their voices, but with something else that felt unfamiliar. Humility. The chamber was full. The projection of the spire floated above the center, now marked with human systems in clear contrast to ancient ones. The lead counselor spoke. The immediate collapse has been prevented. Trade routes are stable. Evacuations are no longer required. A quiet wave of relief passed through the room. Another counselor turned toward Elias. Your methods saved millions of lives. Elias stood, uncomfortable with the attention. They bought time, he said. What you do with that time matters more. The lead counselor studied him carefully. We believed strength meant endurance without change. The spire was proof of that belief. Elias listened, saying nothing. We were wrong, the counselor continued. Endurance without adaptation is only delayed failure. That admission carried weight across the chamber. Scifi watched Elias closely. He did not look proud. He looked thoughtful. The Galactic Union, the counselor said, formally recognizes humanity as a strategic engineering species. A soft murmur spread. Humans were no longer observers. Elias inclined his head. Thank you. The meeting ended with fewer words than usual. Many counselors remained seated, deep in thought. Later, Elias returned to the observation hall where everything had begun. The blue giant star burned quietly beyond the glass. The spire floated between the station and the endless dark. Its light softer now, uneven but alive. Cerethia joined him there, standing at his side. "You are staring again," she said gently. "Yes," Elias replied. She paused, then repeated the question that had started everything. "Is it too big?" Elias looked at the spire for a long moment before answering. "No," he said. "It's just honest now." She did not understand at first. "Honest? It's no longer pretending it can last forever," Elias said. "Neither are you." Cerethia's patterns shifted, thoughtful. "You saw this coming the moment you looked at it." "Yes." "Then why didn't you warn us sooner?" she asked. Elias remained silent for a moment. "Because no one listens until something starts to break." She accepted that answer. They stood together, watching the ancient structure and the human additions move as one. "You did not try to dominate it," Cerethia said. "You did not claim it." "We don't need to," Elias replied. "Big things don't scare us." "Then what does?" she asked. He thought for a moment. "Thinking we are finished learning." Far away, deep within the spire, systems adjusted to their new reality. Ancient code flowed beside newer logic. Where once perfection had ruled, flexibility now existed. The spire would never be the same again, but it would live. In the cycles that followed, stories spread across the galactic union. Stories of a species that did not build the largest structures. Stories of a species that did not fear failure. Stories of humans who stood quietly before impossible things, not in awe, not in fear, but in preparation. And whenever someone asked why the human had stared at the spire for so long, Cerethia would answer softly, "Because humans do not measure size to decide fear. They measure it to decide responsibility."